And Tom, as we understand it, there's obviously the COVID hit to the labour market. There's obviously the regulatory crackdown over the private sector. But how much of this is also, I guess, a cultural movement or a cultural shift?
Yes, there are certainly short-term factors behind the spike in youth unemployment, which is unprecedented in China's recent history as far as we know. So obviously the impact of lockdowns has been huge because service sectors, which are more labour-intensive, have been shut and felt more effect. But there's also sort of long-term structural forces that led the youth unemployment rate to start rising even before the pandemic. One of them being the fact that there's been a huge expansion in higher education, and really it's an enormous increase in the number of graduates. And that's probably creating a mismatch in the labour market.
What about the cultural factor that Heidi just mentioned? We have heard that phrase "Tangping lying flat" spreading through China's internet last year, doing the bare minimum.
Yeah, so we had Hancock last year, and this year there's been an even more extreme slogan, Bailan, which just means sort of give up, basically. And it's a way for young people to express their frustrations and to talk to each other about how they're maybe lowering their expectations. And that's obviously a really useful psychological coping mechanism for people. But in the long term, of course, if people are lowering their expectations and they're not expecting their incomes to increase, then that sort of implies quite a negative outlook for China's overall economic growth. So that's something that the leadership in Beijing is not very keen on.
It's pretty disastrous in the long term structurally, right? Particularly as China's facing the same kind of demographic challenges that we see across some other Asian economies. You look at the situation when it comes to South Korea, when it comes to Japan.
Well, I wouldn't describe necessarily China's democracy as a disaster, because even though obviously we've got a rapidly aging population, as I mentioned, we've had this really fast expansion of higher education. So you kind of got a tsunami of educated young people joining the workforce. And in theory, they should be a lot more productive than the less educated predecessors. But the problem is that they are out of work really at unprecedented rates at the moment. So it's really, imperative on China to get the private sector hiring again. Looks like young people are preferring jobs in the state sector, but the state sector just isn't big enough to provide the jobs that are needed. So it's really important to get the private companies hiring young people again.